Hey there, welcome back to our Sky Tonight program. This is Seth Mayo again, curator of astronomy for the Loma Planetarium at MOAS, and in this edition, we are covering the dates of August 8th through August 14th. We're going to start things off by talking about the full moon that occurs this week, and then not long after, we have the peak of the annual Perseid meteor shower. We'll wrap things up as we celebrate the opposition of the planet Saturn when we see it all night long and when it's at its brightest. So, let's get to it. If you happen to be outside on the evening of Thursday, August 11th, we officially have a full moon. Now, the full moon in August at this time of the year is typically called the full sturgeon moon. And that refers to the abundance of sturgeon fish in the Great Lakes region of North America. So there's a lot of those types of fish, and that would usually mean that type of fish would be easily caught at this time of the year. This is also called the grain moon or the full corn moon because harvesting of crops would typically happen at this time of year as well. No matter what you call it, the moon will be large and bright in our sky and maybe just a little bit brighter and a little bit bigger than an average full moon because, as we've had for the last 4 full moons, this is what we call a supermoon. Now, as we always say, a supermoon does not look that much different than an average full moon, but this is when the moon is full and closer to us in its orbit. It's also called perigee. So that allows the moon to be a little bit bigger and a little bit brighter, and this is the last supermoon of 2022. Now, what's kind of interesting is that this full moon is near the planet Saturn right there, not too far away, on this evening and the next evening as well on August 12th. And when the moon is opposite of the sun, you could actually call the moon in opposition. And it turns out later in the week, Saturn will be at opposition as well, which we'll talk about at the end. So it's kind of interesting to see when the moon is full and you see a planet near it, that probably means that the planet that's nearby is probably close to opposition as well when it's opposite of the sun in the sky. So you may notice that. And also something to look out for is that the moon and Saturn are within the constellation of Capricorn, the sea goat. We talked about that very recently in a previous episode. So that's a rather dim constellation, so the stars of that may be a little hard to see with that bright full moon, but just want to tell you that it is there. So maybe you'll have a chance to see this large bright moon rising in the east and southeast, the full sturgeon moon and the last supermoon of 2022. Now, coming up this weekend on the early morning hours of Saturday, August 13th, we have the peak of the annual Perseid meteor shower. And this is arguably one of the most active and famous meteor showers you can see all year long, and now it's finally here. This is a meteor shower that is named after the constellation Perseus because the radiant point lies within that constellation. Now, Perseus is not the brightest constellation, but it's not the hardest to find as well, and it's near some bright objects. If you can find Cassiopeia in the sky, that looks like a W off to the north and northeast. It's just a little bit south of that, and above a bright star called Capella in the constellation of Auriga, the charioteer. This is actually a winter constellation now rising in the morning. This is Taurus the bull. Actually, Mars is right here as well. And Perseus looks kind of like a lowercase backwards letter Y. So this is that famous warrior who's holding Medusa's head. And I'm going to draw the constellation for you, turn on the picture as well. The radiant point within Perseus lies near the head of the constellation on this side, so a little closer to Cassiopeia, the W shape of stars. And it's best to look at this meteor shower and many meteor showers usually in the early morning hours, the pre-dawn hours before the sun's light begins to fill the sky. So anywhere from midnight until about maybe 5:30 in the morning is a good time to maybe check out this meteor shower because that's when the radiant point of the Perseids is highest in the sky. So you have a better chance of seeing it. And this meteor shower runs for a decent amount of time from July 14th to about September 1st annually, and it derives from the comet Swift-Tuttle that leaves behind a debris field that we are sweeping through at this time of the year. And the Perseids have historically been so great. Sometimes you can find up to 100 meteors per hour. It usually varies between 50 to 100 meteors, which is quite a lot. Now, the bad news is for this year's Perseids, is that full moon that happened recently can still cause problems. Even though it's not a full moon on that night, you'll notice nearby the moon is still fairly bright in that area of the sky. So it's gonna make it kind of hard to see as many Perseids this time around. It's just the way it goes for this year's Perseids. So that may diminish the number of Perseids you may see, but don't fret, because this is such an active meteor shower. There's still a chance to see some bright fireballs and bright streaks of light as we go through that comet debris trail. And for a meteor shower of this caliber, I would still say get out there in that early morning, even the late evening hours of Friday, August 12th, and you may catch still a stray Perseid or two, because it's such a fantastic meteor shower. So hopefully you'll have clear skies and maybe an opportunity to get out in the early morning hours of Saturday, August 13th to see the little bits of Comet Swift-Tuttle streak over your head. As we end the week on Sunday, August 14th, this is when we have Saturn, the beautiful ring planet, at something called opposition. And that's when Saturn is opposite of the sun in our sky, which means Saturn is at its brightest and closest to us and can be seen all night long. So on that evening, you'll find Saturn rising in the east and northeast here. It looks like a rather bright star that doesn't twinkle. That's a good way to tell the difference between stars and planets. Stars twinkle, planets not so much, and you may notice that with Saturn rising in this area. So right in that early evening, right after sunset, you'll find Saturn rises just after, on the opposite side of where the sun is, hence the name opposition. And I mentioned earlier that the moon was nearby for a full moon when the moon is at its own opposition to the sun. And since the full moon was near a planet, that again tells you that that planet must be near opposition, and that holds true for the planet Saturn. Now, since it's closer to us, Saturn will be brighter and larger than normal. And even though it's close, it's still at a distance of about 823 million miles away from us. That's about 73, maybe 74 light minutes away from Earth. That means the light bouncing off of Saturn takes about an hour and 14 minutes to travel from it to get to us, which tells us that it's closer than usual. So since it's closer to us, that means this planet is really great to look at through a telescope right now. If you have a chance to do so, definitely do it, because it really is cool to see Saturn in a telescope, especially because of its rings. And when I show people Saturn for the first time through a telescope, they don't think it's real. They actually think I am dangling a fake or toy Saturn in front of the telescope. It looks so surreal and cool and interesting. So if you can find a telescope, even a small one, and look at Saturn through it, it can be quite amazing. And the rings are beautiful, made up of small pieces of ice and rock. And what's amazing about those rings is that they're very thin, in some places less than 30 feet thick, but they span hundreds of thousands of miles across and make Saturn such a unique looking planet in our solar system. And what's also kind of cool too is you may have a chance to see some of the moons of Saturn as well. So you get that bright disk of Saturn there. It's a very reflective planet with the beautiful and very bright rings around it, maybe a moon or two. It has a very extensive moon system of 82 moons around the planet. And since Saturn is closer to us, it makes for a really nice sight at this time. So maybe you have a chance to see Saturn all night long from sunset to sunrise, rising in our sky, closest to us and brightest for opposition, making for a great Saturn show at the moment. Hey, that's it for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're in the area, please stop by the Museum of Arts and Sciences, and please stop by the Lohman Planetarium. We're running shows every day. If you want any more information about those shows and our programs, please check our website and tune in to our other social media channels where we're really putting out some great content from the museum and all the cool things that we're doing. So we love to see you back here again. Take care, and of course, happy stargazing.